Welcome back to another week of SoCal Business and Basketball Report. This is Ray Dietz, and this week, a little wrinkle, we're here in Northeast Ohio, and we're at Garfield Heights High School. There was a showcase here this evening, and I've been watching basketball in Southern California, Los Angeles area, and Northeast Ohio for about 20 years now, so it's nice to compare and contrast. And a lot of times you see a few more big men in the Los Angeles area, where there's about 10 to 12 million people that live in the Los Angeles County area, and the whole state of Ohio has about 12 million people. So through the years, it's been a good comparison. I remember back when LeBron James played, I remember watching a nice ball player by the name of Evan Burns, who played at Fairfax High School and was a McDonald's All-American. I was impressed with him. He was a top 10 player, and then I came over and watched LeBron, and you could definitely see the level of energy that LeBron brought. It was a significant difference. So each year there's better players in different parts of the country, but it's a pretty good comparison here to do. Another thing that I definitely noticed about LeBron James is he seemed to make his teammates a lot better. So a lot of times you'll see a really good athlete and they don't necessarily make their teammates better. But there were two young players, Drew Joyce and Romeo Travis, that played at St. Vincent St. Mary, and I remember talking to Keith Dambrot, the coach for St. Vincent St. Mary back then, and I mentioned to him I thought Drew Joyce might be a potential Ivy League player. And when he was about a sophomore, and he was real thin, 125 pounder, and Coach Dambrot said, well, maybe. And eventually, both Romeo Travis and Drew Joyce played at the University of Akron for Coach Dambrot, and they won MAC championships. So I think you definitely saw LeBron James make his teammates better through time, and not every player does that. One of the coaches in the area I definitely remember from Northeast Ohio here, Coach Frank Lupica, who coached a lot of very good basketball players and people that went on to do other very good things in athletics as well. He actually coached Mike Vrabel, who went on to play football at Ohio State and play in the NFL, and is a current head coach in the NFL. But Coach Lupica was a very solid coach for just a pillar in Northeast Ohio, and I remember I always wanted to play really well against his teams, and he even one summer he gave me the MVP award at his camp, even though I didn't go to his high school. So he was very fair. And it was funny, a few years later when LeBron James was going through high school, when LeBron won all the awards his senior year at the award ceremony in Akron, Coach Lupica LeBron actually made a request that Coach Lupica present him at the award ceremony. So it's just funny through time how a guy like that does well and helps all people in the area. And Coach Lupica is now retired in North Carolina, and he even had golfers that went to the PGA Tour that he coached as well. But there's always some good coaches that stick in the area. Sonny Johnson was a former Mr. Basketball player in Ohio, and he's today the coach here at Garfield Heights High School. His son is a very good player, a freshman, shoots the ball and has a number of scholarship offers in the Mid-American Conference already as a freshman. In terms of the business environment here in Northeast Ohio, there's a number of public companies. Of course, Goodyear, the tire company. I alluded to the auto and tire industry earlier this year when we were in Northern California. But Goodyear has been a pillar of the business community in Akron for a long time. First Energy is on the New York Stock Exchange. They produce electricity and distribute it, and they even sponsor the Cleveland Browns Stadium. And we're going to focus on Akron here because it's quite a bit to hit Akron and Cleveland. Another major company in Akron, Myers Industry on the NASDAQ. They do tire repair kits, a lot of safety type of products. It's a very diverse company. Diebold is in the Akron Canton area. Diebold, they do, initially it was the cash ATM machines. Through time they've evolved. They do the grocery store checkout machines where you don't need a teller. And they've gotten into software as well. So that's a company that they merged with another company in Germany, but a good employer in the area. Timken in the Canton area is on the New York Stock Exchange, and Timken is separated into a bearing company and a steel company. Joann Fabrics, now it's called Joann Stores out of Hudson, Ohio. That's a fabric sewing type of shop around the country, and that's a big company as well, publicly traded. A couple others, Davy Tree is in Kent, Ohio. Not a lot of employees locally, but they have employees throughout the country. Tree trimming company, and they handle those types of things. East Flatbeds is in Randolph, Ohio. They're in the freight trucking industry. And finally, Summit Racing Equipment. Used to be a mail order catalog you'd see in a lot of places. Guys that like to do aftermarket auto type of things. Now summitracing.com would be their website. They have a lot of auto products. As business evolves through the years, companies transition. The freight industry had a lot of trouble years ago. Roadway Express was in Akron, and they actually took they went bankrupt. Consolidated Freightway went bankrupt, and so things changed. Eventually, parts of that company became Yellow Freight and FedEx Ground as well. So we move on to the basketball side. I wanted to talk a little bit about the history here in the Akron area of Northeast Ohio, and made a little list, and I'm sure I'll forget a few people, but some of the best basketball players, and there's a number of great football players that have come through the area. Some of the best basketball players, James Posey, who played at Twinsburg High School, Xavier, and in the NBA. Of course, LeBron James, who played at St. Vincent St. Mary High School. Jerome Lane played at St. Vincent St. Mary High School in Akron. He went on to Pittsburgh, led the country in rebounding, and got about 5 years in the NBA with the Denver Nuggets and Cavaliers. Gary Grant from Canton McKinley got about 10 years in the NBA. Dave Jamerson was a very strong player from Stowe High School, good shooter, played at Ohio University, and he was a first-round draft pick of the Houston Rockets. C.J. McCollum, probably the best shooter to ever come out of Northeast Ohio, Glen Oak High School, played at Lehigh, and of course with the Portland Trailblazers today. Costa Koufos, played at Ohio State, and also from Glen Oak High School. Had a number of years in the NBA. Alvin Robertson, I was telling Kenyon Martin this summer at a summer league game in Los Angeles that Alvin Robertson was a high school center, and I went on to a junior college, learned how to play point guard, transferred to Arkansas, and after a couple of years there, did well. Was in the All-Star game 4 times with the San Antonio Spurs, and he averaged a lot of steals. He was a very quick player. And you always leave people out with this, but some of the others, Tony Stockman was from Medina High School, played at Ohio State. Ronnie Stokes and Troy Taylor was the backcourt at Ohio State when I was a kid. They played at Canton McKinley High School. Eric Snow was from Canton McKinley High School, and he went on to Michigan State, played a number of years in the NBA. Michael Hawkins was his teammate at Canton McKinley, played at Xavier, and also played in the NBA. And then the last couple of guys, Curtis Wilson was also a St. V's player, was the point guard at Ohio State. And Terrence Dials was actually from the Boardman area. He was the Big Ten Player of the Year his senior year at Ohio State. So there's been a number of good players. Final two in Central Howard High School used to be a power in the area. Back in the day, Grady Mateen, he actually went on to Georgetown. So to be recruited by Georgetown was really a big deal. He went there. John Thompson actually never saw him play in high school. Recruited him, so eventually didn't work out for Grady at Georgetown. He transferred to Ohio State to finish his career, but he was a 7-footer from the area. And then Eric Glenn played at Central Howard, won a state championship, and he played at Kent State. Could shoot the ball for a small forward, and just a rock solid player from the area. And we didn't even get into Cleveland with Clark Kellogg. A lot of other players. We'll leave that for another day. Today, we came to see Chris Livingston, who's a freshman at Akron Bookdale High School, and he did well. He scored a number of his points after the game was already decided, but they played Gilmore Academy and they lost to Gilmore Academy. But Chris Livingston does have a offer from Ohio State as a freshman, very good athlete, and he'll improve through the year, so you want to keep an eye on this one. Gilmore Academy won the game against Bookdale. C.J. Charleston was a pretty good player. He scored 31 points. Looks like he's being recruited by Ivy League schools, so we'll see where he ends up. Pre-season, the best team in Northeast Ohio was St. Vincent St. Mary High School. They look very good. They've got about 3 Division I players, and they blew out Garfield Heights High School here. Though Sonny Johnson looked pretty good. The freshman shooting guard that I talked about that hit a number of threes. Currently, there's a game, Lutheran East, it's playing Shaker Heights High School, and E.J. Farmer's a sophomore. It looks like a pretty good wing player for Lutheran East. That game, they're still in the second half right now. There's a lot of scouts here, Michigan State, a lot of Mid-American Conference coaches, and so we'll see what develops with some of these players. And thanks for joining us again for another week of SoCal Business and Basketball Report. And we'll be comparing some of these players to the other players we see in Southern California the rest of the way. And we'll look forward to talking to you again next week.